Hey there. It is live Q&A with Mark Cohen. Mark is an independent candidate running for Congressional District 3 here in the state of Nebraska. This is so we're looking forward to some really good discussions, some good questions from you, the viewers, and you, the potential voters here in the state of Nebraska. Find out where Mark stands on issues, find out a little bit about himself. And so just join us this evening. Like I said, Mark is an independent candidate. He's running for Congressional District 3 here in the state of Nebraska. And he plans on traveling across the state to meet people face to face. And so, but tonight, we know that not everybody can always have the schedules that meet up. So we're going to do this live and join us. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Melanie Knight, and I am a member of Mark's campaign team. And so let's start out the night and just say, hey, Mark, what you been doing this week? I know we're all got busy schedules, but we'd love to hear about yours.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Melanie. What have I been doing this week? Gosh, I can barely remember what I did yesterday or what I need to do tomorrow. So I've got a person who tells me what I need to do tomorrow. Let's see. On Thursday, we went to we were in Kearney for something called the Independent Grocery Summit, and I spent a whole day there, listened to a lot of presenters talk about how independent grocery stores are doing and how they're affected by a lot of different things. So that was really educational. On Friday, we visited a hemp extraction facility in Pleasanton, Nebraska, and that was just amazing. I think it's called Sweetwater Hemp Company, and boy, what an impressive place that is. And they gave us a great tour and very educational. Came back here to Lemoyne on the north side of Lake McConaughey on Saturday, got Solomon and just tried to catch up on paperwork and whatnot, and then started a new week. I teach a karate class Tuesdays and Thursdays, and so did that last night, and here we are tonight.
Well, I know we've talked in the past, and so throughout the night, you're going to hear me probably break in and say, one of the ways that you can support Mark in this campaign is to jump on his website is markfornebraska.org. You can donate. You can also donate your time. No amount is too small. Every dollar counts to help him get out onto the road, to be able to see people, to purchase signs, postcards, the way to reach the voter, right? And if you're not able to contribute financially, please consider doing door knocking, canvassing, calling, all of the different things. But that's markfornebraska.org. He's also on all the socials. And so getting back to your week, Mark, I heard that today you had to actually make an apology. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Melanie, I'm ashamed. We posted on social media. I'll read you the post. What we posted is, no corporation has ever donated to a candidate and asked that candidate to protect your privacy. I don't want their money and I won't take it. Let's stop fighting each other over trivial things and deal with the real threat at Nebraska. In response, Larry Ellison at TikTok said that I had violated his community standards and to protect Nebraskans from people like me. That post was banned, so I had to apologize to all my fellow Nebraskans for, my error. I take full responsibility for it, and I'm sorry.
Very good. So thank you for that, Mark. So let's get to the questions here. First question that we've got is, how do you respond to those who say that nobody can beat Adrian Smith?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is as a karate instructor is that's kind of a loser's attitude. My students would be doing push-ups if they told me they couldn't win and had that kind of negative attitude. But aside from that, I think that's kind of a simplistic conclusion. They're basing it on past elections, and they tend to say things like, well, it's 80% MAGA, but I think Adrian Smith got about 243,000 votes, but that's 243,000 different people, and they each had their own reasons for voting for him, and they were not all the same. So that's the first fallacy. I think the second fallacy is that was 2 years ago. That was before tariffs. That was before a war that has driven up input costs and consumer prices. It was before an immigration policy that's made it hard to hire ag workers and hospitality workers and construction workers. And then, I think the other fallacy is every race that they used to reach that conclusion was essentially a two-way race. There was never a credible independent candidate like me who was a veteran, who had a degree in agricultural law, who got nearly 4,000 signatures. So I'm really looking forward to a three-way race in this district where the voters of this district get a chance to say no to both parties and a chance to say no to the two-party system and elect somebody who's going to work for them and not for one of the party bosses.
Thank you, Mark. You were talking about what you've done this last week, and you mentioned going to the Independent Grocery Summit. And so more independent grocers are closing. How would you address that?
So one of the things that it was really great to hear them. One of the things that people who proclaim that the free market is sacrosanct tend to forget is that the free market requires competition in order to work, and that's why it's actually Republicans, more than 100 years ago, passed these antitrust laws like the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act, and in particular the Robinson-Patman Act, which essentially says a seller can't discriminate in pricing. So the problem is these laws don't do much good if they're not enforced, or if the agencies that are supposed to enforce them are not funded, or the people who are in charge don't want to enforce them. So I would really push for stricter enforcement of the Robinson-Patman Act, in particular for grocery stores, and make it easy for grocery stores who are, being targeted by large box chains to bring civil actions under the Robinson-Patman Act to prevent price discrimination. That's probably the biggest single thing that we can do.
You also mentioned that thank you. You also mentioned that you visited a hemp facility. So, what are your feelings about hemp?
Well, it was really educational. What this huge facility, and the gentleman walked us through how they extract it, and it was great. But look, I mean, hemp has if I break hemp, and I don't claim to be an expert, but if we break it down into two rough markets, there's the fiber kind of market where hemp can be a fiber and be used in a lot of products rather than plastics and stuff. And so there's that. But the thing that tends to get the controversy is the cannabinoids, and some politicians, for their own reasons, are trying to demonize that, and they're generally the same politicians that are getting money from pharmaceutical companies. But some of these products that the hemp companies make have been proven really effective for veterans, for others who are suffering from various illnesses. And it's ironic that the people who claim to believe in competition have now changed federal law to make it really hard for hemp companies to compete with pharmaceutical companies or alcohol distilleries and whatnot. So I would like to see true competition, and I would cannabinoid products. They say, oh, our kids are gonna they'll be doing heroin next week, and really the kids are in danger of dying from not having health care. They're not in danger from allowing a hemp company to extract products.
Thank you. So we've got some questions coming in, Mark, some more questions. So this one actually is from Lobby Plumbing. They ask, after you are elected, on what do you think needs to happen to repair all the damage that the Republicans or Trump administration has done to democracy?
Oh, wow. Big question. But I like the positive attitude. That person would not be doing push-ups in the karate class because I like the when you are elected. So the first thing we got to do is get the money out of politics, because right now our leaders from both parties are not being elected by voters; they're being elected by donors. And although this administration has, in my opinion, done a lot of damage, the Democratic Party needs to take some of the responsibility too. It was some of their attitudes towards rural areas that pushed voters into to go in the other direction. So work to overturn Citizens United, require transparency in campaign finance, really focus more on preventing foreign actors from interfering in our elections, because I think that to fix any problems, we got to first make sure that our democracy is working, and so that those are probably some of the most important things I would do. And then, aside from that, there's a lot of legislation that just needs to be undone, and it's going to take people who have the courage to do it. So, just for example, the $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid that devastates rural hospitals, and that would be one of the first things I would like to see undone.
Okay, thank you. We've got a question now coming in from Southeast Nebraska. This deals with agriculture. What would your plan be to advocate for Nebraska farmers and ranchers in regards to trade policies with other countries?
So one of the things, the president sort of did this unilaterally on short notice, and ag markets depend on predictability and reliability and certainty. So one of the things a representative can do, even if that representative can't by with a single vote, even if that representative can't change tariffs, that representative can use his or her voice to speak out. When these tariffs were imposed, Adrian Smith was on the chairman of the trade subcommittee, and he basically went along with it. So I will not go along with anything that Mike Johnson or Hakeem Jeffries want just because that's what they want. We need to speak out on behalf of our farmers and ranchers. Those tariffs drove up input costs, raised prices, caused us to lose customers. Ronald Reagan was one of the biggest proponents of free trade. And I don't remember his exact quote, but he said something about we should not allow people to demand tariffs while cynically waving the American flag. So I think as a representative, I would at least be able to speak out against them.
So, speaking of a different kind of trade, we have a question asking, how do you feel about stock trading by members of Congress?
Oh, well, yeah, it's been on my website for a while. Yeah, I'm just opposed to it. So I will probably be the poorest man in Congress or woman. I own no stocks. I have no mutual funds. I have my little house in Lemoyne here. I have another rental property. And but it is amazing how somebody can go to Washington with a modest income, and after a few terms, they're suddenly a millionaire, like Adrian Smith. And so I would just ban the trading of individual stocks, period. In other words, once you enter office, you're done. You're done trading individual stocks until you leave office. That's the simplest solution to it. So, and it's a fair question. By the way, I got endorsed by an outfit called Unrig Washington, and that's one of their requirements is you have to agree to ban individual stock trades by members of Congress.
Say thank you. Like I said earlier, we're going to keep plugging Mark's website. And so I am going to just do a brief mention of that. If you are interested in Mark's campaign and would like to help out in any way, including donating, please go to markfornebraska.org. So let's continue with our questions. Sure. Oh, we've got one. It says, speaking of Adrian, who you mentioned, do you know where he's at? Yeah.
Well, I don't know where he's at. I doubt he's tuning in to me tonight. I did write a letter to both him and to the Democratic candidate, Ms. Stilley, last week, proposing a debate with both of them. I gave them a deadline of September 4th to respond because a lot of folks don't know it, but the counties can start sending out early mail ballots at the end of September, which means people can start voting in early October. And it's important that the voters in the district get a chance to hear us debate now before early voting starts and not in October when it might be too late. People may have already voted. So I do have a plan for the debate if Adrian Smith doesn't want to debate me and or Ms. Stilley doesn't want to debate. We will still have a debate, and we will just use cardboard cutouts and let the crowd can pick their answers from their prior public statements or their websites.
Perfect.
It's going to happen. It will happen one way or the other.
Kind of like Adrian is in the general public. Not very many people know who he is because he's not often seen in real life. So, yes.
Well, he's been
So that kind of answers the question of debating.
he's been able to coast because it's always been a two-way race where voters felt like they haven't had any real choice. And this time it's different. We got on the ballot with 4,000 signatures, and so people have a real choice. And so I really hope that he will debate.
Okay. Changing topics a little bit, we've got a question talking about, are you in favor of privatizing the postal service?
No. So, when people propose privatizing any government service, the first thing they always say is, well, it'll be more efficient. And um, what they really mean is they'll be able to provide uh, less service, uh, and because they're going to eliminate jobs. So the goal for government agencies should not only be efficiency, but should be good customer service. And in a rural community, the post office is the lifeblood for a lot of small communities. But another thing that I think is not talked about enough with the privatization of the postal service, the everything we do is tracked on the internet now. Every purchase we make is tracked. There's flock cameras all over the place. The U.S. mail is still one of the few ways that we can communicate with each other without it being tracked. The government has to have a warrant to open your mail generally. And if we privatize the postal service, private companies will spring up to replace that service, but they will require all of us to sign pages and pages and pages of legalese where we waive all our privacy, and they'll track what we do and who we communicate with and what we say. So I think that's not talked about enough, and I would vigorously oppose privatizing the postal service.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. So we've got a question. This question actually came in late last week, and so we weren't able to ask it then. So we'll ask it now. This was from Flam. It says, "What tax cut did Elon get?"
Oh, I think that they are referring to something I must have posted on social media about tax cuts for billionaires. The so-called big beautiful bill, which I call the big bag of gifts to billionaires, it didn't just impact income taxes. It impacted a lot of corporate taxes and for organizations such as SpaceX. And so even though Elon doesn't pay himself a salary, so he avoids the income tax, but he's still getting tax breaks from that bill. It's just in a different. It's just not an income tax break. It's a break on other ventures that he has received from that bill.
So we've got a comment into asking about something that's been in the news a lot this last week, and that is the importing of beef. And so this question is how do you feel about President Trump's recent decision to allow more beef imports?
Uh, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad. So, everything's going along and it's stable and it's predictable. It's not perfect. And then President Trump, out of nowhere, imposes these tariffs that, really hurt our ranchers and farmers, among other people. And they hurt rural communities disproportionately because the tariffs tend to be on agricultural products or raw materials that are produced in rural areas. So they really hurt the rural areas. And then we arranged to shore up Argentina's currency and allowed for the quadruple imports of Argentinian beef. And now here we are, roughly a year later, people are complaining that their beef prices are too high. So now the president, to undo the harm that he caused to beef prices, is doing away with or at least waiving temporarily the same tariffs that he imposed a year ago. So to try to get the price of meat down for Americans. So it's like kind of silly that we had to go through all that, and now he's reversing his actions just to undo the harm that he caused, and he's claiming credit for undoing the harm that he caused.
Yep. Adrian is scheduled to be actually at the Gage County Republican Barbecue this weekend with Ricketts and others. Do you think they'll be serving imported beef?
Well, your guess is as good as mine, but I hope that we can support country of origin labeling so that the American consumers can at least know where they have a choice, be informed when they decide, what products to buy.
I had the chance to talk to a woman on a fixed income within the last week or so, and talking about the price of beef and the price of groceries and how hard it's making it. And that ties into one of the questions, another question we received from Southeast Nebraska. Our person asked, what policies might you advocate for or help to ease the affordability crisis that that are facing working families?
Okay. So affordability, that's a big thing because it covers groceries and housing and healthcare and many things. So people are going to get tired of hearing this, but to fix a lot of these problems, we got to first fix our democracy so our representatives are working for us, not for the donors. But specifically, the tariffs, raised prices. The war has raised certain prices that, and it ripples effect. So if say the price of diesel goes up, that has a ripple effect on any good that is transported using you know trucks that operate on diesel. Um, so one of the things I teach my karate students is that your voice is a powerful weapon, and we need a representative. So even if that representative by himself or herself can't convince the other 434 representatives to vote for real change, at least don't let them get away with sweeping it under the rug, but be a voice for and hold both parties accountable for not helping out the people that they are supposed to represent. In terms of the specifics, um, we can talk about housing. The federal government has some good programs that recognize the unique nature of rural housing, but the funding for those programs hasn't kept up with the need. In terms of healthcare, I've already talked about undoing the $1 trillion tax cuts to Medicaid that's going to kill rural hospitals and put them out of business, which is in turn going to have people have to travel more to get health care. So we can deal with a lot of these individual affordability issues, but I tend to look at systems, and the larger issues is who profits from us having high prices, and it's the people who are donating to the two parties.
We have a listener here tonight that has put in a comment slash idea here for you, Mark. So they ask, this is from Steve. Steve asks, would you be willing to sponsor a bill that breaks the SNAP benefits away from the farm bill so that the fight for them can take place and leave them buried in the farm bill?
Um, that in general, that's a good idea. Um, One of the things that why our Congress is broken is we don't have single subject bills. We have omnibus bills and continuing resolutions. So legislators are oftentimes forced to do an up or down vote on a bill that actually contains 500 different proposals, and so some are good for Nebraska and some are bad. And if we had single subject bills and fewer continuing resolutions and omnibus bills, that would solve some of that. So in theory, I like that idea. The problem is each Congress writes its own rules. So if they don't write the rules that way, and I sponsor a bill like that, it'll die in committee. And again, so that goes back to me just being a voice and calling out both parties and holding their feet to the fire.
Say thank you, Mark. Once again, I'm going to give a shout out to Mark's website and ask that if you are interested in his camp and in helping anyway, please check out markfornebraska.org, and also check out him on all the socials under Mark for Nebraska. On to our questions. The next one comes from Tracy. Tracy asks, have you or will you accept any contributions from APAC?
I have not, and I will not. And they probably would never offer anyhow because I would be too much of a wild card and unpredictable uh, person for them. We have not received any donations from any corporation or any PAC, and not we haven't received any donations from any union PACs either. So it's all grassroots. It's just individuals sending us what they can, and I don't see that changing.
So this kind of goes back a little bit. We were talking about grocery prices, the price of beef, tariffs. And so this is another question that was from last week that we didn't have time to answer. This is from Sam. Sam says, millionaire GOP Representative Adrian Smith said that 55,000 is more than sufficient for a family of three. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think he was taken to task for that statement by another member of Congress. Look, I've been out, for a year talking to people across this district, which includes 80 counties. It borders 6 different states, and I think Representative Smith is just out of touch. One of the first things I hear, no matter where I go, it doesn't matter whether it's Nebraska City or Shadron, affordability. The cost of housing, cost of healthcare, if you can even get healthcare, and now the price of gasoline and diesel. So, yeah, I kind of don't know what world he's living in, because when I travel the state, $55,000 doesn't buy you much.
One more question here on economics, unless we've got more coming in. This is a comment that we had left on a post, and this particular person, Trista, says that you are an independent that favors Reagan's triple down, and it doesn't work now, but they think that you favor that. So, what do you say to that comment?
I'm kind of reminded of the movie Casablanca, where somebody tells asks Bogart why he came to Casablanca, and he says, "I came here for the waters," and the person says, "Well, there is no ocean here," and Bogart says, "Well, I was misinformed," and I think Trista is misinformed, because I have at times. Said that there are aspects of Reagan that I liked. I mean, he was never accused of being a pedophile. He stood up to the Soviet Union and told them to tear down the Berlin Wall. But I've never been a fan of his tax policies. And in fact, I'm the only politician in America openly saying we need to go back to a tax system more like the one that had bipartisan support under Eisenhower. So she's just 180 degrees turned around on that. It's been on my website since I started this. It's important to me, and that's a good example of why an independent needs to go to Washington, because an independent can say something like that neither party wants to say. Neither party wants to even when the Democrats get in office, they might increase taxes a tiny little bit on the wealthiest people, but I'm talking about big change where we go back to something closer to what we had under Eisenhower and the uber wealthy, and the higher corporate taxes forced the corporations to reinvest their profits.
Thank you, Mark. Sorry, my internet's cutting out a little bit, so I didn't mean to interrupt you there. So,
well, let me just finish the thought. So the higher corporate taxes forced the corporations to reinvest those profits because they're going to get taxed if they didn't. So that created jobs. And now what happens is they just build mansions for their CEOs or give them stock dividends. So that's that. I just wanted to finish that thought. Thanks.
Thank you. And I do apologize for interrupting. Talking about something that neither party has done, we have a question. How do we get real immigration reform and not just a police state?
So we have been dealing with immigrants throughout our history. And again, it angers the Democrats when I say this, but Ronald Reagan signed immigration reform 4 years ago. Every president has deported millions. The problem just didn't suddenly appear when Trump's second term began, and I believe it was intended to be a distraction from other issues. So, real immigration reform, we need a path to citizenship. I would cut ICE funding back to where it was before this new administration began. That would be a good step. I think that money can be used for our veterans and for other programs. I'm very concerned about the police state, and I think there are some things that we can do with that, including perhaps looking at qualified immunity for officers that right now they have a lot of legal protection. I think we need to examine that. We need to make clear that citizens can record officers if they don't interfere with their operations. And in general, I think we need to prohibit officers from hiding their identity unless they're working undercover or they have a court order.
Thank you. In answering about the police state, we know that technology has become a part of that and tracking, and you've talked about that. Would you like to add any more about that for people that maybe haven't heard you address that issue?
Yeah, I moved the camera a little, or my laptop a little closer because our moderator, technical person, was telling me the sound was a little choppy. So hopefully the sound's better, even if you have to look at my face a little more. But in terms of I'm very concerned about what I call the global surveillance state. In China now they have a social credit system where the government tracks everything that people do, and if you don't behave well, they can increase your interest rate and do all sorts of things to you. Now we, instead of doing that directly through our government, we have Amazon doing that, and Google and Microsoft, and now flock cameras. So I'm very concerned about it. We need to have a real discussion in our country about the nature of privacy, and put some restraints on that. And I do fear that it's like the slow boiling frog. We've kind of grown to accept it, and I'm glad to see that people are kind of waking up. These flock cameras are getting people to wake up to it's not healthy for democracy when people have no privacy, and the government and the corporations that run the government have access to all our private information.
So we know that with an increased use of AI, with an increased use of surveillance, that there's then they're blaming that on for doing the data centers. So we have a question relating to data centers. Do you have ideas on how to move forward with or not with in regards to data centers?
Yeah, well, sure, I have ideas. I mean, the most interesting thing to me is how quickly this issue came on upon us. And normally we have issues, we can see them coming and we can study them. And it seems like this data center issue is really just the last 12 or 18 months. And I have concerns about the water usage, especially in a state like Nebraska, where water is critical to agriculture. Concerns about the impact on the power grid. You can put up a new data center a lot faster than you can build new power resources. It takes 12 months, 18 months to build a data center, and it takes 5 or 10 years to really expand the grid. So, and then concerns about the impact on customers. They shouldn't be footing the bill for the data centers electrical uh, usage. I have concerns about the noise on neighbors. And one of the things I find interesting is that for years it was the people who claim to be conservatives were talking about states' rights and local control. And now that they're in power, if a state or local government wants to regulate AI or pause AI, they threaten that state or local government either by withholding funding um, or worse, sending ICE in to intimidate local officials. So I think it's an issue where we ought to allow state and local governments to have more power to do what they feel is appropriate for their communities.
Thank you, Mark. Once again, I'm going to be plugging Mark's internet or his website. Sorry, there. Markfornebraska.org. If you are interested in his campaign, if you're wanting to donate your time, donate financially, just
Oh, faded out there a little bit on my end. Yeah, Melanie might be gone there. I know she is in Clay Center and had internet problems earlier today. It sounds like those internet problems.
comments.
Oh, there we go. Okay, there she is. Oh, welcome back. I know you had internet problems in Clay Center today.
I don't know what's going on, but you know what? That's the age we live in. You got to be a little bit flexible when you're dealing with technology. So yeah, I'm back. So hopefully, I don't know what you heard or what you didn't, but on the discussion of data centers, we have an additional one extra question. But I do also want to encourage people to please keep giving us some more questions and or topics to discuss. So the final question that I have, at least right now, is this is an addition to the data centers. What about the push for solar farms and or wind towers?
Okay, good question. Yeah, and it does kind of tie in with data centers. So this is one of those issues where I feel like there's too many people want to have their cake and eat it too. Um, okay, I personally believe that our dependency on fossil fuels has played a role in climate change. And I also am worried that sooner or later fossil fuels are going to run out. But if you don't like fossil fuels, then you have to have alternatives. So what are the alternatives? Well, nuclear is one alternative, but that comes, at least in the minds of some folks, with its own risks. So, what are some other alternatives? Well, solar and wind are alternatives, but that's a kind of an example of people have concerns with that also. Um, so there's a tension between individual property rights. Everybody wants the right to do what they want with their own property, but none of the neighbors want anybody to have a right to do their neighbors to have a right to do with their own property. So I do think it's another area where state and local governments ought to be free to regulate it. I think there might need to be some federal regulations. The EPA on the cleanup. What happens with a lot of these ventures is companies come in, they build it, they make a quick profit, and then when they're no longer making a profit, they can sometimes abandon things, and so I think that needs to be regulated. And there might also need to be size limits on the size of some of these operations. It's if somebody's got like a quarter section of land, that's one thing. If somebody's got 100,000 acres, I think that's a different thing. Again, I would leave state and local governments to the freedom to deal with that. And if you want to have regulation and make sure that it's done right, then you need to be willing to make the wealthy people pay more taxes to fund the agencies that are going to do the regulation.
All right. One of the comments that we had earlier in the chat was talking about how Nebraska's agriculture is in deep trouble. We know that we've had fires earlier this year in western Nebraska, and so that we've had a lack of water. And so, can you just address some of those issues and some of the issues, not only on the tariffs and on the beef, but all the issues dealing from one end of the state to the other?
So, yeah, I was on some show and they asked me about the district, and I showed a map of the district, how it runs from Iowa and Missouri on one side out to Wyoming on the west. And is a little bit facetious, but I told them the eastern half is corn and soybeans and the western half is cattle. Not exactly true, but there is more moisture. But they all share some common problems. And ag markets are a great example where there needs to be competition. Dan Osborne has talked a little bit about the big four beef companies, so that's one example. And by the way, the Packers and Stockyards Act, I earned an advanced degree in agricultural law. Judges have interpreted that to say that a farmer or rancher who wants to bring an action has to prove harm to the entire industry rather than to just themselves. But Congress never said that. So we need to change that. Congress needs to change that and make clear that an individual rancher can bring an action and just needs to prove harm to himself, because that will increase competition. And again, people say they don't want big government, but yet it was the Department of Agriculture that had regulations that were trying to make a level playing field for ranchers, and this administration came in and undid all those regulations. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want competition and regulation, you got to fund it, and you got to put people in charge of the agencies that'll want to do the job that they're supposed to do. Right to repair is another issue for farmers and ranchers, so I support that. Bigger picture, I think, is climate change and water. I remember meeting with the farmers union in March in Lincoln, and it was 97 degrees in Lincoln in March, which I've never seen before in my life, and I don't think that's a coincidence. Just a few weeks before that, I had to evacuate here because there was a 700,000 acre fire. So I think the ranchers and the farmers, they know what's going on. They see the changes in the climate. They're having to plant different crops or take different approaches to to how they operate because of climate change. And so when you're cutting funding to government agencies and to extension services and universities that are trying to help farmers deal with all that and adjust, that's ultimately harmful to Nebraska and to rural communities. And that we should be doing the opposite and trying to figure out ways to deal with a real problem.
Kind of going back to my little glitch here in my internet here, a lot of rural Nebraska has been without broadband or low access to that. And so, how can we get broadband internet throughout the third district? And we know that the funds were available from the federal government, but then our state did not use it. So, any thoughts on that?
Well, you're right. There were some funds available from the federal government, and our Nebraska chose to use very little of those funds on broadband compared to say South Dakota. So you'd have to talk to the state officials about their reasons for that. I guarantee you somebody made money on it though. But going back to the issue of putting that aside, that's a useful role for the federal government. That we should be funding those types of projects so that rural communities can provide the same opportunities for businesses and schools and whatnot that urban centers have. And again, it goes back to taxes and to having a representative that is working for you and not taking money like Adrian Smith does from Amazon and Google Packs and things like that.
When talking about the budget and funding, we have a question from Tom saying, in regards to the national budget, do you think that the Department of Defense can justify consumption of 50% of our annual tax revenue?
Okay, nuanced answer, and the answer is maybe. So the number 50% by itself is kind of meaningless to me. It depends on, um, what's that 50% being used for. So since the end of World War II, we've used some of that money to keep our sea lanes open for trade and to rebuild Europe. So we have trading partners in Europe, to rebuild Japan. So we have trading partners there. So um, I don't know how much money is necessary to make those things happen. What percentage is necessary? Maybe 50% is what is required. But I also know that I think it was a former Bush uh, Undersecretary of Housing, Catherine Austin Fitts, claims that there's $21 trillion that can't be accounted for from the Pentagon. So that is a concern. That is a lot of money. So uh, I would say to Tom that we need to certainly look at the Department of Defense, and um, I don't know what the right number is, but I know that Congress ought to be exercising oversight to make sure that we're not spending more than we have to, and that we know where the money that we are spending, that we know where it is going. And then certainly this most recent unnecessary war, Congress abdicated its responsibility. So we're spending money there, and apparently, if you believe the news reports, our troops are not getting, the food and the rest that they deserve. So, I've got concerns about it. And again, it goes back to representatives doing what they're supposed to do and being a voice.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So, going back, I know we've kind of been going back and forth tonight, leaping a little bit, not as quite as organized as maybe we were in the past. But one of the comments that we had was going back to the hemp, and this person, if I can find it, said, it's a comment, and they said hemp is also a fiber-oriented product similar to bamboo. It's very versatile, it's drought resistant, and it's a great alternative to the corn soybean cycle that is failing. So any comments about that?
Well, I'm just intrigued by the possibilities. Again, the tour of the Sweetwater plant up in Pleasanton was just awesome. And I don't know much about the plant itself. What we were told is that in addition to the many uses that it has, it's actually very good at cleaning soil. It's got some properties where it's a good plant for getting bad stuff out of the soil. So I'm intrigued by that. With climate change and water shortages, our farmers need to be looking for alternative crops and ways to put their land to use. And so I think we need to get the federal government out of the way and let the free market, work. with hemp.
Say absolutely. Like I said I was going to do, I'm going to keep plugging Mark's website again. So we've got markfornebraska.org. Please check it out. He's got a fabulous Q&A on there. You can see his stance on policies. And so also, please do not forget to like and share this video. Go to all his socials and like and share, because we know that the more you do, the more it will be pushed out, and that your friends and neighbors will be able to know a little bit more about Mark. One of the challenges in this district is it's 80 counties. It's a large landmass. And so we are depending on you to get out the word, and invite us to your town, invite us to your area. Mark would love to be able to talk to you one-on-one. He is Mark for Nebraska on Facebook, Insta, TikTok, yeah, all the socials. And so, including here on YouTube. And so, next week, where are you going, Mark?
Oh, well, happy to tell you. Just let me finish up on the website. I'm really proud of the website because most politicians, they have, an American flag and a few platitudes. And when I decided to do this, I really wanted to do something different. So we've got 37 different issues listed there and tried to have detailed responses. If you see an issue that we haven't addressed, or something where you want to suggest an addition or change, email us. I'm very proud of the website. It's probably the most detailed website of any candidate in America. As far as where we're going next week, I have a volunteer who tells me that. From memory, I believe we are going to the state fair on Friday. I hope to get there about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, just kind of wander around and meet people. I think they've got a beer garden there, and then we're going to do a parade that night. Next day, Saturday, we've got a meeting with some folks from the Hispanic community there in Grand Island. Back here, I think on Sunday, I do a couple days of work and take care of Solomon, and then let's see, the following week, I think we're going to Scotts Bluff for a kickoff event on the 4th. This is coming from memory, so I'm probably skipping a lot. Actually, on Saturday, I'm actually going to Llewellyn after we're done. After I come back from Grand Island, I'm going back to Llewellyn. And then let's see, after Scotts Bluff, I know I'm going to Alliance on the 9th. And after that, I probably have to rely on one of my volunteers who sends me a schedule every day and tells me where I need to be. So, and Karen, if you're listening, thank you so much.
As Mark mentioned, on September 4th, we are having Mark's kickoff. We are doing that in Scotts Bluff. And so be looking for the information regarding that, the time, the place. If you can be there, please do so to come support Mark. Tell anybody that you may know in the area that to come to support and to get the chance. And so we've got somebody also asking, Mark, one of the final questions here, we've got, what is the certificate that is behind you?
Oh, okay. So that is one of my Air Force medals. It's called the Meritorious Service Medal. And I'd be the first to admit it's not a combat medal. I was a lawyer. I joined the military to see the world, and they sent me to Omaha, which is not what I had anticipated, but it worked out okay for me. I found the Sandhills and decided to move back here and make the Sandhills my home. But I was good at what I did in the military, and I'm very proud of my service, and so that's what that is.
All right, thank you. And actually, I am going to jump back on. I do have the details for that kickoff party. It is on September 4th from 4 to 5. That's Mountain Standard Time at the Legacy of the Plains Museum in Gering, Nebraska. So don't want to mix that up with Scotts Bluff. For all of those locals out there, you know the difference. So once again, we are having we're calling it the Backroads Tour. Mark's going to be traveling some of the most well-known back roads here in Nebraska, because we know that sometimes those roads lead to some of the most beautiful places and some of the most interesting places. And so If you're able to attend, it is Friday, September 4th from 4 to 5 Mountain Standard Time at the Legacy Plains in Gering, Nebraska. Please don't forget that you can donate on Mark's website. That's markfornebraska.org. One final question. And comment and like and share all the things, including this video. So, Mark, talking about traveling, because we know that you're going to get out across the state of Nebraska and meet people face to face and allow them to be able to meet you, get to know you, ask questions. But once elected and you are in DC, how are you going to get Solomon back and forth to DC?
Well, believe it or not, I've thought a lot about it because I do believe I will be elected, and I do try to anticipate problems. The problem is when you have a 140-pound Irish Wolfhound that you love, it's expensive to put them in the cargo hold of a plane, and it's scary to them. So I'm not going to do that. And the other problem is, as a representative, you're not allowed to accept gifts generally on private aircraft. So I imagine I will be doing a lot of driving. And by the way, if you're interested in applying for a job as a driver, just email me through the website. You would naturally need to promise to only go the speed limit, and you'd have to listen to my music, but you might learn something. We'll probably be going back and forth a lot. I'm not a big fan of flying anyhow, even though I was in the Air Force. And one of the reasons is, I mean, we built this security apparatus where now you got to wait in line 2 hours to get in, and now they feel they have the right to search your phone. I'd rather, it's almost better to just drive and enjoy yourself than it is to fly anymore. So give me a chance to, since this district encompasses the whole state, give me a chance to stop along the way every time I go back and forth. So that's the plan for Solomon. And then I'm sure we'll have volunteers there in DC who can babysit him now and then. There's a couple volunteers that are now Solomon qualified. They've learned how to put the gentle leader on him and take him for walks and stuff. So we'll like everything else, we will deal with it.
Thank you, Mark. If everyone who has seen Solomon loves Solomon. And so if you haven't, if you get the chance, whenever Mark's at an event, be looking for Solomon there. You can't miss him. Like Mark said, he's a giant, he's an Irish wolfhound. And so a gentle giant, if you've ever met him, the best campaign dog ever. So that probably wraps up our evening of questions. We're going to try to make this a regular event. And so be checking for our schedule. If we don't have anything next Wednesday, look for us. But if not, then just keep checking on all the socials and including on this page. We want to hear from you and what's important to you. Any final words before we go, Mark?
Well, I wish that Solomon was on his futon here, but he's not, so I can't show him. But I do know, you might remember that President Trump created a board of peace where if you pledged $1 billion to his board of peace, you would get a little certificate in the board of peace. So we have something similar called the board of pause, Solomon's board of pause, and you can save yourself about $1 billion. Any pledge will get you a certificate in the board of pause. And all your dollars get used for gas and things that we really need to make this campaign happen. So anything could chip in, I'd be grateful for.
Let's all give Solomon a couple bones there. He deserves it. He's a good boy, a good dog.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep, I'm going to let you guys go tonight. But like I said, keep checking. Follow him on all the socials. Check out his website, markfornebraska.org. And if you are able to donate, please do so for Solomon's Board of Paws, but also to allow Mark to be able to go across those back roads of Nebraska and to be able to meet people face to face, answer questions, and get to know them. Your next representative, District 3 of the state of Nebraska. So have a great night, guys.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Bye.